Out. Thanks for having us today. I know this is probably a repeat for some of you. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the Youth Apprenticeship Program that I know many of you have heard recently, but just in case anyone hasn't. And then Jamie Bernthal is joining us. He's been the lead on our new Bridge initiative. We're trying to make it a more seamless transition for students going from youth apprenticeship to registered or the adult apprenticeship once they graduate. So as Pam said, if you just put any questions in the chat, and we'll take a break in the middle to answer any questions that you might have. With that, we'll just get started here. So the Youth Apprenticeship Program has been around since 1991. We're the oldest youth continuous program in the country. So it's a really exciting time for apprenticeship right now. Wisconsin's leading the way for the youth and the adults as far as programming goes, and we have the largest of both, I believe, to offer various programs for students in high school and once they graduate. It's been a commitment that Wisconsin has shown since '91, and we've gone through several different administrations. So we're very excited about the new administration coming in and the new areas that we can branch into. So it's a 1 or a 2 year program. Students typically start when they're a junior or senior. They can start the summer before their sophomore year, and they have until the summer after their senior year. So it sounds like a lot of hours to them. It's 450 hours minimum for a 1 year, but it really gives them quite a bit of time to complete that. And if students have an IEP, we're able to slow that down for them. So if they would need to stretch, say, a 1 year program over 2 years, we can certainly do that for them. They combine their work-based learning with 108, their related instruction with 180 hours, they have 180 hours of related instruction in the classroom, typically a high school class that's more advanced or something at the technical college if they don't have things available at their high school, or sometimes they've exhausted all of the classes that are related in the high school. And then they work 450 hours throughout that year at a related work site. And employers have been highly supportive in Wisconsin providing those work sites. I'm sorry, I have a cold, so try not to sniff on you here. It's available to youth in participating school districts, and almost all of our school districts in Wisconsin participate right now. So if you happen to live in an area that doesn't, by all means let us know, and we'll see what we can do to work with you to get them involved. So this is kind of the layout of our program. There's 3 different levels. Jamie and I are 2 of 4 staff at the state level, and then we have Kathy Crary, who's been involved with the program almost since the beginning. She's the chief of the Youth Apprenticeship Program. And Jamie Bernthal, myself, Amy Phillips, and John Keycaver oversee the grant and the policies and programming at the state level. Then from there, we have regional coordinators, and right now we have 33 different consortiums around the state, and you'll see those different colors. The lines represent school districts, and the consortiums form however they'd like. Sometimes it's a chamber of commerce that organizes it, sometimes a school district. Many of our CSAs oversee the grant, so however they'd like to come together and form a group to offer the Youth Apprenticeship Program to the area's high schools. And Jamie oversees a lot of our grant that's offered each year, and we'll be releasing the new one soon in April, typically. So if there are districts that want to become involved, now is a good time to learn about it and to ask any questions and get things in order to join that grant. So, and then within each of those districts, we have local coordinators, and the local coordinators are really the boots on the ground. I always say it takes a nudge to get somebody into youth apprenticeship. Students often need a little bit of encouragement. It's hard just to put it in a class program list and expect students to know what it is and to join in. So it really helps when the teachers or local coordinators are encouraging students to choose an occupation or program of study based on their interests and to get them started. It is kind of a process in some of the districts. students need to apply, and the applications vary a little bit across districts depending on what the districts require, but typically it's an application that they complete, and they need references, usually 3 references from teachers or other community members, and then there's the usual job application as well. It also varies. Sometimes the local coordinators will help find those jobs. Sometimes the students are expected to find that themselves. So that also varies. But, you know, if you have any questions about that in your area, you can always let us know. We can connect you with the right people. Oh, and back on that slide, there's a link there at the bottom. So if you're wondering who your coordinator is in your area, you can go to that directory, and it's listed by school district. So like I was saying, the consortiums are divided into 33 this year, different consortiums. They each have a regional coordinator and a steering committee, and we highly encourage them to include transition people on those steering committees. So if you'd like to be involved in your area, I would encourage you to talk to the regional coordinator about the steering committees. They often meet in conjunction with other steering committees because we know, especially in the rural areas, there's only so many people and so much time. So a lot of times they'll coordinate with their school to work steering committees or Carl Perkins, those kinds of things. The regional coordinator typically recruits the businesses, but again, like I said, sometimes students or the local coordinators will do that as well. And for students that might have an IEP, they can certainly access those services from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation for placement, things that they might qualify for additional assistance. So right now we have 311 school districts that participate. That's school districts that have students placed right now. And out of the 374 high schools that participate. So this is one of our highest numbers ever. Schools are really recognizing the advantages of apprenticeship for students. Students, I think, are really talking it up amongst themselves. They're our best recruiters when they get out there and encourage their friends to participate. And I think a lot of times once the other students see their fellow classmates going out and really learning things on the job, that is a good motivator for others to join in. I know we've had, I was a regional coordinator for 10 years with CISA 3, and I know I heard stories of the other students coming back from the employer, and they would come into their related instruction and ask the other students to pay attention because they really needed to learn things in the classroom. So help them motivate their learning and class participation. We often see grades and attendance go up as well because students can really see that correlation between what they're learning on the job and in the classroom. So they typically get to use what they're learning in the classroom right away on the job, which is the big plus for apprenticeship. So our model is based on a localized model. It's responsive to your local economy. So we have 11 areas that the consortiums can choose from, but they don't have to offer all 11. It's really based on what you have in your area and what's needed for your local economy and what can be supported. The local consortium also selects the appropriate related instruction based on what's available in your area, which reduces administrative costs as well. So another part of our program design is each employer assigns a mentor for the youth apprentice. And I think that's really key to the apprenticeship. And that's what makes it more of an apprenticeship than just a part-time job for a high school student. They really, they learn a lot of the things on the job. That's where they get the additional training. If they're having any issues, the mentor can step in and hopefully take care of it before it becomes a problem and students are terminated or anything like that. If they need additional help, that can be provided. Again, if job coaches are needed and through DBR, we can get someone in addition to the mentor. So just a lot of different options for students are available. Students have to be on track to graduate to participate in youth apprenticeship, but that can look a number of different ways. So alternative education counts. We can have students that are homeschooled. There's a big variety there. We're pretty flexible. The one thing that the rule that the state has is that a GPA cannot be used as a deciding factor for participation. So we really want to give students a chance that maybe academics aren't their strong point, but once they're out on the job, it really makes a difference for them in a lot of different areas. Again, like I said, related instruction is determined by the school district, and the work hours are determined by the employer. So that's the part where we really encourage the coordinators to talk with the students and the employers so that they know these are still high school students, so a lot of times they are still involved in sports or they want to attend homecoming, things like that, but the students need to realize that they're expected to provide actual work and be a real employee. So they need to give notice if they're going to expect time off for spring break or things like that. Typically one sport can be accommodated, but not three, so it isn't something that's for everyone. Choices have to be made between what they want to participate in. We do expect that the work and the classes are done relatively at the same time of year so that they are applying those skills on the job as soon as they learn them in the classroom. So we don't want them just taking all the classes during the school year and then working only in the summer. So they should be working year-round. So the Youth Apprenticeship program is really driven by industry, and we're working on updates coming soon. Our curriculum is going to get a complete overhaul, and we really listen to the industry. We'll have groups around the state listening to each area and what they'd like to see a beginning entry-level employee to know. So stay tuned for that, or if anyone would like to be involved in that, we'll be advertising for those steering committees soon. It's a standardized statewide program, and it links to the registered apprenticeship, which Jamie will talk about in a little bit. And that's another key point of the Wisconsin Youth Apprenticeship Program. Other states we've seen have apprenticeship, but Wisconsin's is one of the only ones that's really standardized statewide. Some other technical colleges or colleges offer an apprenticeship, but it isn't as statewide as ours is. And I think that's a real advantage to the Wisconsin program. So what you're learning in Ashland can be applied in Racine. We have skills that are basic to the entire industry, and it's a certificate that's recognized statewide by the employers. So a student can potentially bring that certificate from anywhere in the state to another employer who's had a youth apprentice, and they'll know exactly what they've learned. So there's simultaneous work and learning. The learning objectives provide the academic base, and the work site competencies provides the hands-on skills and abilities. And Jamie will talk a little bit more about how that runs into the registered apprenticeship program. So we know that all students now take the ACT test, and he's been working on standardizing that across the board for those worksite learning objectives and competencies. We have a flexible instruction delivery, so online is available if students don't have something directly in their area. Again, we know up north it's a much different landscape for students to get from the high school to the technical college. So if they can get something online, that can count. The local high school can offer those classes. Again, we hope that they're a little more advanced than just the basics. Or the local technical college is available as well. So the youth apprenticeship aligns really well with the career clusters. We have 11 of the 16 career clusters that we currently offer. And again, when we are updating the curriculum, we'll be taking a look at to see if anything else can be added into those career clusters. One thing that we look at statewide is that it's portable and available across the state. So it's something that has to be able to be offered in all areas of the state. And I won't read each one of those to you. Behind each one, there's a skills checklist, and students can go through and choose which areas they're interested in to complete those skill standards, and then choose the coursework that goes along with it. So those of you with DPI or the K through 12 know the 4 stages to the ACP planning. I won't go through each of those, but again, youth apprenticeship aligns really well with that. And I think that's one of the things that's driving a lot of students to the youth apprenticeship now. We have our highest numbers ever this year. We've just been breaking records each year for the last 2 years or so. So it's been really a tremendous funnel for us, for students, those kind of students in the middle who may not be planning on going to college, but want training above and beyond high school, which is what it was really designed for. And often we see students that participating in apprenticeship and maybe weren't planning to go to college find out that what they want to do requires more training or more coursework. And a lot of our employers are stepping up and paying for that coursework for students. And most of them are earning above minimum wage. So one of the things we've heard from our coordinators is we've asked them to increase the number of students that participate with IEPs and students at risk, but many of them are classroom teachers and aren't necessarily familiar with placing students with disabilities. So we've been offering a few more tools for them on how to get started. I'll be speaking to some parent groups and trying to get out a little bit more with the TIG group has been great, but having me at various events and conferences and things to get the word out. I'm part of the Wisconsin Rehabilitation Council and just got asked to be part of a national task force too. So Wisconsin Apprenticeship is getting a lot of recognition, and we're really trying to include all students and do what we can to make that access easier for transition into work after high school. So there are some program enhancements, and these are some things that we're offering to the coordinators as well, in case they would like more assistance in placing students. We have apprenticeship liaisons through the Department of our Division of Education and Training at DWD, and DVR, of course, has been tremendous working with us, and they have counselors assigned to each high school, so they're available if students need more assistance. And then we also have the business service consultants who have been wonderful to work with also. They're the main connection between the business and the high school. So if you have a certain need in a certain industry, I'd highly recommend talking with them to see what they have available in your area. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to talk about participation. Jamie's our data guru and runs the youth apprenticeship dashboard and things, so I will turn it over. Unless you want to take a break, Pam, and talk about any questions before we move on to the more adult side of things.
I don't see any questions right now, so let's just keep going.
Okay. All right, sounds good. I'm Jamie Bernthal, and the 2 areas I work with here is I keep track of the data for youth apprenticeship, and I work, I'm kind of the lead on the Youth to Registered Apprenticeship Bridge. So I thought I'd start you off by giving a little overview of youth apprenticeship by the numbers for this current year, and this really shows how much we've grown. Back about 5 years ago, we were trending with about 2,000 YA enrollees a year, and that kind of held steady for a long time. But in the past 5 years, we've grown a lot in terms of student participation, and we're up to over 4,300 this year, only expecting more as it continues. The average wage has gone up slightly as well, and you can see from the graph that we really represent a wide variety of different industries here. So manufacturing being our largest, but a lot of students in hospitality, health, agriculture, making up some really large chunks of student participation. And I think that's a real strength of the youth apprenticeship program, is that for most pathways that students are interested in working in, we're able to offer them some kind of a program. Our completion rates have been holding really well at 80 to 85% every year. And in the demographics, you'll see that this year we had 13% of our students identified as being either at risk for not graduating or as having an IEP. And that's an area that Darla has worked really hard on, making sure that we accurately track the number of students who are in those categories. It was something that we were having some issues with in terms of getting the data. And now that we've been able to get that data, I think we're more accurately reflecting who our program is able to serve. And that's a big advantage. So we're able to serve not only basically students from all across the academic spectrum. So our program was created to serve what was called the forgotten half, and those were the half of students who weren't planning to go on to college. And that was back in the early 90s. Now, since we've come to today, what we've been able to realize is that the idea of apprenticeship, the idea that someone can experience greater learning by doing something on the job, really applies to all different kinds of students. So we have students, for example, doing our STEM program, who are placed at biotechnology labs at UW-Madison, and then may go on to a 4-year college degree after that. And we have students in many other areas, and we try to serve them all. So I'll do the next slide, which is an overview of youth apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship. So I know that registered apprenticeship was something that this group was interested in. So I'll try to give a quick overview of how that works. Just as we're proud of youth apprenticeship being a program that's been around since 1991, registered apprenticeship in Wisconsin has been around for over 100 years. And we are one of the first states to have a real strong registered apprenticeship program like that. Youth and registered apprenticeship are both follow the same kind of model, the same idea of learning through doing and having simultaneous classroom experiences and work-based experiences. So when we created youth apprenticeship, we were really building off of registered apprenticeship's model, and it shows in these similarities. Youth apprenticeship is strictly targeted for high school juniors and seniors. Registered apprenticeship can really be for anyone. You're allowed to start, I believe, as young as 16, although typically most apprenticeships require high school graduation to start. But the average age has really been going up over time. And in registered apprenticeships world, they see that as an issue. The average age of new registered apprentices is 28, and that number has been creeping up slightly over the years. So one of our big goals is to make a better connection between the two programs so we can get younger students entering registered apprenticeship. In youth apprenticeship, we have 450 hours of work-based learning each year for up to 2 years. Registered apprenticeships do take a lot longer. Registered apprentices are always, I think always or almost always working full-time, and that means 2,000 hours a year. Some apprenticeship terms go up to 5 years, so that's 10,000 hours of work-based learning. The related instruction is actually pretty similar in terms of the requirement. In youth apprenticeship, that's 2 semesters per year. So you're generally taking 1 class for each semester that's related to your area. And in registered apprenticeship, Classes are most often, although not always, delivered at a technical college, and usually comprise 144 hours per year. Often registered apprenticeship classes are night school. Sometimes they are done on, say, only every other Friday or something like that. We kind of share the same need to balance a work schedule with a classroom schedule, except in registered apprenticeship, they're really working full time. And really, if you combine their work with their school hours, they're doing more than full time. The great part about both programs in Wisconsin is that we both have specific competencies that we define and we assess. Of course, the nature of those competencies is very different. Youth apprenticeship was designed on that broader career clusters model. So an example youth apprenticeship program, let's take our health career cluster. All students in health have a set of core competencies that they learn, and they also choose one pathway to specialize in. So for example, nursing assistant is one pathway, pharmacy technician would be another pathway, dental assistant would be another pathway. And as a youth apprentice, you'll be learning some items from those pathways, as well as some core competencies that we see as similar across the entire health industry. Registered apprenticeship is always very specific. An example might be carpentry, and they might have an even more specific version of that as well, there's several examples, but registered apprenticeship job occupations are usually very specific, and they give very detailed knowledge of what you need to learn in there. And that's why we say youth apprenticeship is a mile wide and an inch deep. Registered apprenticeship is an inch wide and a mile deep. I've also heard from people who work in registered apprenticeship, they'd rather us use the term a mile wide and a mile deep, because it really, in some occupations, it really covers a wide variety of things. Welding, for example, a registered apprentice welder has to learn about 8 different welding techniques. Youth apprenticeship in welding, all 8 techniques are listed, but they're expected to be experienced with only 1 or 2 if they do a 2-year program. So let's go to the next slide. So in addition to youth apprenticeship, another program that synergizes with it that DWD offers is the CTE incentive grants. This is a separately developed program, and the intent of this is to reward high schools who are able to offer industry recognized certifications. However, youth apprenticeship certificates also qualify for this grant. The idea is that youth apprenticeship certificates are reviewed and validated by industry. They lead to measurable better outcomes, especially as we're able to place youth apprentices into registered apprenticeships. And this is a source for high schools to get additional funding to pursue these high quality CTE education programs. If you work with high schools in the CTE department, you may already be familiar with these, so I won't go too much into detail on them, but high schools are able to get up to $1,000 for each student who receives a certificate, and all YA certificates apply to that. I'm going to turn it over quickly to Darla to talk about the Transition Incentive Grant, since that's her area.
Yes, thanks, Jamie. And I think most of you are familiar with that through the TIG program. Up to $1,000, or I believe that may even be going up a little bit this next year. But these are some things that school districts can combine if they have students with an IEP who continue their employment or education after graduation. The school district can receive these additional dollars, as well as the CTE incentive grant. So some nice funding for students to add back to their special ed department or the current technical education department in ways to fund the youth apprenticeship program. Our grant is capped at $900 per youth apprentice, and that was done in part to encourage partnerships in the communities. So people really can't run the youth apprenticeship program without partnering with others in the community or the school district. So the links are there, but if anyone has any questions afterwards, you can always email us for details. And then, of course, there's always the WIOA, or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Grant, that's available. And students that qualify for that grant, that can enhance things like tools or uniforms or any kinds of barriers like that they might have to get them started working. So the WIOA coordinators are located in the workforce development boards, and I have a list of them if anyone's interested as well.
All right. This next slide shows an example of one of our youth apprenticeship checklists. And I'm going to use this both to show youth apprenticeship and then show how it can be similar to registered apprenticeship. You can see on this checklist that we have core skills, safety, and manufacturing fundamentals. Like I said, those are the things that are common to any youth apprentice who is working in the manufacturing area. After that, we have several different pathways with different units, and this is where somebody gets more specialized. We can offer programs in any of these units, and they all come with a set list of competencies designed by industry, with the intent of being something that would prepare the student for a entry-level job in that area. All of the competencies also are vetted by our Equal Rights Department, who does employment of minors laws. And that's another big benefit of the program, is that we've carefully reviewed different types of equipment that students are allowed to work with. And that's reflected in the checklist on what they can and can't do. Now, how this fits into registered apprenticeship is that registered apprentices also have several competencies. They're presented in a slightly different form, but it's the same idea. What we've been doing with the youth to registered apprenticeship bridge work is getting people to recognize that there are some cases where those competencies overlap. So let's take a welding student, for example. In our welding unit, students are supposed to be working with basically one of several different welding processes each year. In a registered apprentice welding area, over the course of the whole apprenticeship, you're supposed to be competent with all of the different processes. But a first-year registered apprentice is not going to be doing all of that. They're going to be working with maybe one or two. So somebody who has completed a youth apprenticeship has done several competencies that are similar to those that a first-year registered apprentice has done. We've created crosswalks that directly compare the competencies in both programs. And the idea is a student who completes their youth apprenticeship can then go to a registered apprenticeship committee, bring their checklist and work hours that they've done in youth apprenticeship, and use that as a great stepping stone, resume builder, and possibly even get work hours transferred over. So both of our programs really count the number of work hours. As you saw earlier, we do 450 per year. A registered apprentice does 2,000 to 10,000 per year. But one unique feature of registered apprenticeship is that there is a progressive wage scale. So a starting out registered apprentice usually makes 50% of the journey worker wage, a journey worker being somebody who completes a registered apprenticeship. As they put in work hours, that wage goes up at a defined rate that's set in the contract. So if you come in with some work hours already completed, and the person who's signing your contract allows those to transfer, you might become closer to that first pay raise, really putting you on a head start in the program. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to eventually encourage in this Youth to Registered Apprenticeship Bridge. The idea of encouraging it is we don't want to have students working at a level that they're not ready to work at, but we do want to offer them some kind of encouragement to get into registered apprenticeship. We want to show them that their hours that they've worked matter and are valued, and we want to encourage them to continue on that path. So I'll go to the next slide. And this slide lays out some examples of the types of related instruction that you might be taking in a youth apprenticeship. So you can see that it's not a defined list of career pathway courses necessarily. We're not, when we started this program, we used to have a course that we developed with a total curriculum package that was called IT Youth Apprenticeship Course. The course was usually taught at a technical college. And it was very expensive to keep up with that kind of curriculum. What we've done instead is we've developed curriculum standards with several different competencies. And now either technical colleges or high schools are expected to identify courses that already exist and use those as related instruction. Where this comes into a kind of bridge activity is we've been encouraging our consortia to look more towards technical college courses and hopefully look more towards courses that will be similar to what a first-year registered apprentice is learning. Because registered apprentices also have requirements to take related instruction. And if we can put them ahead in that way too, we think that's great, giving them a head start on their related instruction as well as a head start on their work hours. And we can do the next slide as well. This is just an image of what our youth apprenticeship certificate looks like. Oddly enough, this is actually an old certificate that we don't use anymore because drafting and design has been combined into manufacturing. But this is just to show that youth apprentices do receive a certificate from us when they complete the program. And that's about all I have right now. So next slide is questions. And maybe
that's my assistant today, Jack.
Oh.
Very inquisitive. Yeah, I would just like to mention one of the things with apprenticeship is I know a lot of people want to encourage students to go on to college, and we would just stress that apprenticeship is college. It's hands-on college. Students are still taking college courses when they are in the registered apprenticeship program, and then applying those things on the job just like youth apprenticeship. They can also, one thing I didn't mention is If students are super seniors or continuing school, high school past age 18 with an IEP, they're not ready for youth apprenticeship until they're maybe 19 or 20, they're certainly welcome to join whenever they're ready at the end of their senior year.
Thanks for mentioning that. I was also going to say, now that you've mentioned that, where there is also a bridge from registered apprenticeship onward towards more higher education, and that's a program that the Registered Apprenticeship Bureau has been working on. If you complete a registered apprenticeship program, you can qualify for a Technical Studies Journey Worker Applied Associate degree. And in order to get that, I think basically the idea is if you complete an apprenticeship program, you've already taken many courses at a technical college. That's your related instruction. If you then decide you want to continue on, you basically just have to complete some gen eds, and then you will end up with an associate degree. And then, of course, you can take those credits and continue on with the very popular technical college to UW system transfer agreement. And that's something that we're working on promoting, I think, more, because that's a great way to show students that registered apprenticeship can be a pathway to higher education. And an advantage of it, for anyone who doesn't know, if you're a registered apprentice, the courses that you're taking at the technical college are actually paid for by your employer, and they pay you an hourly wage while you're working there, which of course is a great deal. And that's just kind of an inherent part of registered apprenticeship. So, shall we do some questions?
Yes, so I am going to stop recording at this point, and then we'll go through, there's some questions in the chat.
All right, sounds great.